The endocrine system is a collection of cells, tissues, and organs responsible for the production and secretion of chemical signals called hormones. An endocrine gland is an organ that secretes hormones directly into the bloodstream. All hormones act on target cells remote from their point of origin. The hypothalamus plays a key role in regulating the endocrine system. It's a region of the brain that contains specialized neurons called neurosecretory cells that secrete hormones. Some of these cells project into the posterior region of the adjacent pituitary gland, where the hormones are released into the bloodstream. Other hypothalamic neurons release inhibitory hormones or releasing hormones into the bloodstream that feeds the anterior region of the pituitary gland. These hypothalamic hormones cause the anterior pituitary to withhold or release its own sets of hormones. The pituitary gland releases a great variety of hormones, including growth hormone, GH, which has growth-stimulating effects on a variety of cell types throughout the body, and hormones that target the thyroid gland, adrenal gland, kidneys, and reproductive organs. The thyroid gland produces hormones such as thyroxine, which regulates the body's metabolic rate, and calcitonin, which decreases the blood calcium level. The parathyroid glands, which are embedded in the thyroid gland, secrete parathyroid hormone, PTH, which increases the blood calcium level. PTH and calcitonin work together to keep the blood calcium level close to the set point. The adrenal glands sit atop the kidneys. They secrete hormones such as epinephrine, which is involved in short-term stress responses, cortisol, which is involved in long-term stress responses, and aldosterone, which controls the reabsorption of sodium ions by the kidneys. In addition to their function in producing urine, the kidneys are endocrine glands. When blood oxygen levels are low, the kidneys release the hormone erythropoietin, or EPO, which increases the body's synthesis of red blood cells. The pancreas is an endocrine gland that produces the hormones insulin and glucagon, which work together to maintain the homeostatic levels of glucose in the blood. The testes produce sperm, but also act as the major source of the male sex hormones, especially testosterone, which induces and maintains the male secondary sex characteristics beginning at puberty. The ovaries, likewise, produce the female gametes, but also function as endocrine glands. They produce estrogens, which induce and maintain the female secondary sex characteristics. The hypothalamus and pituitary gland form two anatomically distinct systems, but together they coordinate the actions of many key hormones. Pituitary hormones are under direct control of the hypothalamus. Consider the posterior portion of the pituitary gland. Neurosecretory cells in the hypothalamus project into the posterior pituitary and produce antidiuretic hormone, ADH, and oxytocin. These hormones are stored in the axon terminals of the posterior pituitary. When the body is dehydrated, the posterior pituitary releases ADH into the bloodstream. In response, water is reabsorbed by the kidneys. When the posterior pituitary releases oxytocin into the bloodstream in females, the hormone triggers contractions in the uterus during labor and the ejection of milk during nursing. Oxytocin release in the male stimulates contractions of the prostate gland. In summary, the posterior pituitary serves as a storage and release site for hormones produced by neurosecretory cells that originate in the hypothalamus. Now consider the anterior portion of the pituitary gland. In contrast to the posterior pituitary, the anterior pituitary and the hypothalamus are connected only indirectly by blood vessels. In response to the arrival of releasing hormones from the hypothalamus, the pituitary secretes other hormones that enter the bloodstream and then act on target tissues or glands. In addition, there are hypothalamic inhibitory hormones that prevent the secretion of certain anterior pituitary hormones. In some cases, the production of the anterior pituitary hormone is controlled by both a releasing hormone and an inhibitory hormone of the hypothalamus. In summary, the anterior pituitary serves as a hormone production and release site that is controlled by hypothalamic hormones. The key hormones of the anterior pituitary are adrenocorticotropic hormone, or ACTH, which stimulates the production of glucocorticoids, follicle-stimulating hormone, or FSH, and luteinizing hormone, or LH, which trigger the production of sex hormones and control the menstrual cycle, growth hormone, or GH, which promotes growth, prolactin, or PRL, which stimulates mammary gland growth and milk production, and thyroid-stimulating hormone, or TSH, which triggers the production of thyroid hormones.